Hello, friends and listeners. Welcome to Truth, Lies, and Alibis, the true crime podcast from three friends sharing their perspectives from having years of 911 dispatch experience.
Episode 23.
Surprise, surprise.
In this episode, Jessica and I discuss the trial of Casey Anthony and the outrage it caused. 8 days after the body is found, Dr. G advises that the body found was definitely Caylee Anthony and determines her cause of death as homicide by undetermined means. Dr. G says, and this is a quote, "There is no child who should have duct tape found on their face when they die." Investigators get a search warrant for the Anthony's house based on them identifying the body as Caylee Anthony's, and they determined that the blanket at the crime scene and the canvas bag matched items in the Anthony's home. So the blanket matched her bedding set, and then the canvas bag is actually a set that is sold at a store, and there was only one of them at the house. So the other one was found with the body. They determined everything with the body came from the Anthony's home, and Casey is then charged with first-degree murder. Under Florida law, the media has to be provided with documents and court statements by the court, and so the media went crazy with this case. That's part of the reason why it probably got so much airtime on Nancy Grace or, all the Fox News, all
magazine
that kind of
covers.
stuff. Yeah, because apparently in Florida, you just have to tell the media everything, which to me is crazy because, like you said, the media can just make whatever up they want up, and if they have all this stuff, they can just share it with the world how they interpret it, right?
Right, exactly. Yep. It can sway lots of people.
Yeah. So definitely a trial by media kind of thing. On April 13th, prosecutors announced that they intend to seek the death penalty, which, it's a child murder, so if any case warrants a death penalty request, I feel like that is one of them. On May 9th, 2011, jury selection began, so it takes almost 3 years. The judge determines a jury will have to be picked from elsewhere and housed in Orlando for the trial because of all the information shared by the media. Like we mentioned, the trial by media. The case was so popular that people waited in line from 3 to 4 a.m. to get a spot in the courtroom, and there were actually fights outside the courthouse for seats. They were doing a lottery.
That's bonkers.
Yeah. Which I understand. I understand the fascination, right? Because here I am doing a true crime podcast, and I, understand the fascination of how does this happen? Why does this happen? I don't understand waking up and waiting in line at 3 to 4 a.m. and then getting in fights and actually getting, assaulted just to be in there. It's... Yes, I wanted to know all the information, but it's also a child's life. A child died, right, and you guys are making this big spectacle out of it.
It's that obsession to be where history happens.
Yeah.
I think.
I get that.
They're well, I have to be there because then 30 years from now, I can say that I was there. Woohoo, big deal.
I'm telling you, the only thing I waited in line for more than an hour was the midnight releases of Harry Potter, okay? That's it. I would not wait in line at 3 a.m. For a trial.
I'm trying to think of a movie that I've waited in line for.
Well, probably not anymore, because now you can buy tickets and pick your seat, which is so much better.
Well, yeah, but I've also seen movies since I was little, so I was trying to think.
Sorry, where was I? Okay. On May 24th, 2011, the trial begins. Kaylee's grandparents were granted access to the courtroom for the trial as victim representatives, even though they were witnesses in the case. So typically, if you're a witness, you don't get to be in the courtroom. But speaking from my experience for my daughter's case, right, if we had gone to trial, I would have been allowed to be in the courtroom because I was her victim's representative. And so I could have been there the entire time. But my mom, who was a witness, or my grandparents who were witnesses, they weren't going to be allowed to be there the whole time because the prosecution wants your testimony to be based on your experience. Yeah. And they don't want other people's experiences to kind of change your experiences because, as we've talked about before, memory is a weird thing.
Memory's tricky.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Casey Anthony shows up in an oversized button-up clothing, and she seemingly is trying to look plain to combat the images that have been shown in the media because there have been images of her in kind of revealing clothing, partying it up, she's an attractive lady, right? So the media got their hands on what they could, and they shared that. Many witnesses are called during the case. One was a friend who said that when Casey was pregnant, she told her she didn't want to keep Caylee. Like, she was talking about putting her up for adoption, saying she didn't want to be a mom, which, back to your comment that you made before, I think this probably happened. I mean, coming from my experience, again, I was 18 when I got pregnant with Nova, and I was scared. So I could understand, like, for me, that wasn't my choice, but I can understand someone else saying they didn't want to be a mom, because it's freaking hard and it's freaking scary. And it sounds like she didn't really know who the dad was, right? So she was going to have to raise this baby alone. Well, this friend also says that Cindy basically told Casey she had to keep her.
Not her decision to make.
Definitely not. And it's also like, in my opinion, I'm like, I have so many questions in this case, but one of them is, why didn't the grandparents just take custody of her?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's also a choice that she could have made. Okay, so Casey wants to put the baby up for adoption. We'll take her. You know what I mean? There are so many different things. I've had a friend in high school whose sister had a baby at a young age, and her parents took custody of him until she was ready to be a mom. And if she had never been ready to be a mom, they would have kept the baby until it was 18. You know, there's lots of choices they could have made that could have maybe prevented this. And I'm not blaming them at all. I'm just saying that I don't think Casey was ready to be a mom. And also, based on her decision making and the things I've seen about her in media and all that stuff, I don't think she ever really should have been a mom. Jose Baez's opening statement was, like, mind-blowing. He tells the jury that Caylee was never missing, and on June 16th, 2008, Caylee drowned in the pool at the Anthony home. He claims George found her and yelled at Casey and told Casey that her mother would never forgive her and Casey would go to jail for the rest of her life. Jose then says that Casey didn't have anything to do with disposing of her body, and he tells the jury that George wrapped her in a plastic bag and her blankets and disposed of her body so that Casey would not go to prison, which I'd like to pause right here. This makes no sense, right? None of this makes sense to me. As a police officer, George Anthony has to know, in Florida, that accidental drownings happen all the time. He's got to know the likelihood of Casey going to prison for an accidental drowning is very low. But the probability of going to prison for hiding a body, even if it was an accidental drowning, is probably
much higher.
Right? He used to be a cop. I think he knows these things. And according to the CDC, this is a quote, more children ages 1 to 4 die from drowning than any other cause of death except birth defects. So accidental drownings are very common. Parents typically, from what I know, don't go to jail for accidental drownings. They don't. Just like they wouldn't go to jail if they got in an accident and their child died. Unless, say, they're doing something at the time that is also neglectful. Right?
Was this a complete surprise to Cindy and George when this is said?
Yes. Well, actually, no. It was a surprise when Baez came to them and said, "We're gonna say this," but they were prepared at the trial. So when they were told that they could be in the room for the trial, they are also told that they couldn't show any emotions. So I'm gonna tell you another part of Baez's opening statement. Baez then has to combat the lies that Casey told investigators, and to do this, he tells the jury that Casey is a liar because she was taught to lie by her father. He says George taught her to lie because she was sexually molested and raped by her father since she was 8 years old. There's no evidence to back this up at all. She never told a friend that he was raping her, as far as I know. As far as I've seen on the documentaries I've watched on the case, the stuff I've read about it. He basically says, like, this is like a quote, it's his words, I don't know if these are his exact words, but he basically says, like, at one point he goes, she would have her father's penis in her mouth and then she would go to school and have to act like everything was normal, which I was like, I don't understand how you're saying this statement when you can't back it up with any evidence and he's never been tried and convicted, and also, like, she's a complete and total liar and that's been proven. So I don't know for sure or not if it happened. In my opinion, it's my thought that it probably didn't. That they probably came up with this as a way to kind of explain why she is the way she is. So George Anthony is called to the stand by prosecutors. He is asked if he ever sexually molested his daughter. He denies the accusation. He also denies having been at the home when Kaylee's found. During his testimony, you can tell he is holding back tears and is really upset. And when Jose comes up to talk to him and cross-examine him, he doesn't ask, like, if about the sexual abuse. He brings up that George Anthony had attempted to commit suicide around January of 2009. He brings that up instead of like confronting him. And at that time, George went to Daytona Beach, Florida, where he took about 70 pills and drank alcohol. He leaves like a 5-page note saying he wants to go be with Caylee, basically saying he can't go on because all of this stuff has happened. Nowhere in those notes does he say anything about being there when Caylee died. Nowhere in those notes does he say anything about molesting his daughter. Like, nothing like that. He just is saying, like, he wants to go be with Caylee. And I honestly think, as a father, he's upset that his daughter turned out the way she did and that he couldn't protect his granddaughter. That's my thought. To counter the story that Casey's saying that he molested her, the prosecutors also play, the phone call I sent you, there's hours and hours of phone calls between them. And there's multiple times in prison where Casey tells her father that she loves him, that he's a great dad, that he's a great grandfather, that she can't wait to get out so they can be closer, like comments like that.
It just doesn't explain away everything else that she had said and done.
No, it doesn't. It's like, okay, I also like was molested, but I'm not a liar. You know what I mean? There's lots of people out there who don't just lie about their entire lives because they were molested.
Yeah, well, like why make up a story about a babysitter? Why abandon, I don't know, like it just doesn't.
Yeah, why didn't she just come clean and say she drowned, this happened, also my dad's been molesting
and I'm afraid
me.
Because, right.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
explain anything.
And the comment about her, like, she initially say that she was embarrassed?
Yes.
So then...
She was embarrassed. She didn't want to upset her mother. Moving on. Because, yet again, none of this makes sense. During the trial, it comes out that Casey was lying for years about working at Universal Studios and that she would take Caylee to her supposed nanny's house, Zanny the nanny, and she was actually unemployed. So
what was she doing?
Who the fuck knows?
They don't know. So for 2 years, this girl is pretending to go to work every day?
Yeah, and stealing money, apparently. And checks.
Wow.
Yeah. The tow truck driver also comes and testifies that he has towed multiple vehicles with dead bodies in them, to which I say, what the fuck? Then I say, well, this is Florida. So...
Hey, yeah, all right. It's, hey, in my experience, and I've got a lot of experience towing vehicles with dead bodies, let me tell you.
But that's what I'm like, I'm sorry, he said he's towed multiple vehicles with dead bodies in them?
Like, you find out later, or?
I mean, he had to have, right? If he towed them, like, it was probably like a private property tow, and he went and towed the fucking vehicle, and he's like, this smells weird.
He gets back to the tow yard and be like, there's somebody in the driver's seat.
I think they're probably in the trunk.
Maybe he means that he works, like he's called often by law enforcement when they process a scene and they take the body and then he's towed multiple after. I hope that's what he means. I hope that he hasn't towed multiple vehicles with bodies in them and then found out later that there's a body in it.
But that story is more fun. Like, it's like, oh, this vehicle's been here for, I don't know how long it is that it has to be abandoned with them, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. And they're like, it's our vehicle now. And they're like, let's look in the trunk for treasure. And the treasure happens to be a dead body. I think that's how it happened. It is Florida, Jessica. Again, I remind you.
I know. People eat people's faces down there. I get it.
Florida's like a whole nother world.
They
basically have him come to testify that he also smelled the dead body smell because at trial, Cindy Anthony tries to take back her statement saying, oh, it was the pizza.
Why would she do that?
So this is my thought. I think that she was struggling to come to terms with the fact that her daughter killed her granddaughter. I think she knew she lost her granddaughter and she didn't want to lose her daughter too. I don't understand it, but I have seen, and also with Dateline and stuff like that, you see where the person who commits the crime, their family doesn't want to admit. There's all this evidence, and they still don't want to admit that their family member or loved one could have done that. So they will back them no matter what, right? They'll quit their jobs to like help with the case. They'll do fundraisers, lots of things, because they don't want to admit that their loved one did what they did. I don't understand it because I'm also like, well, she's your granddaughter, so... But...
Right. She deserves that justice, but...
Yeah.
I guess everybody responds differently when that happens, I suppose.
Yeah. So, a subject with the Oak Ridge National Laboratory testifies that there are high levels of chloroform found in the carburet in the vehicle. Chloroform is released during decomposition of a body. It's also used to knock people out. However, the following day, an FBI agent testifies that it could be similar to the amount of chloroform in some household cleaning agents. So there's a couple things here, right? One, was she using chloroform to knock Caylee out to be able to go do her partying and whatever? Because Caylee had to have been somewhere when Casey was at her boyfriend's saying that she was with her nanny, right?
Right. Yeah.
Two, was it chloroform from her decomposing body, which was probably in that trunk? I mean, based on the information. Or was it chloroform from cleaning product that they tried to use to clean up the mess? There's lots of things, but it all leads to the same conclusion. There was probably a dead body in that trunk. So the prosecutor's theory was that Casey used chloroform to knock her out, put duct tape over her mouth, and let her die in her sleep. She then wrapped her in a blanket and a bag and put her in the trunk of her vehicle before going to her boyfriend's house. This is their theory. They think that she had the body in the trunk when she went to his house because it was probably in there for a while. Prosecutors allege that for 31 days, Casey embraced her child-free lifestyle. So, on the day that Caylee was last seen, Casey is seen on security camera footage at Blockbuster with her boyfriend renting 2 movies. Her boyfriend testifies she didn't seem upset, she didn't seem unusual, she seemed happy to be with him, and at the beginning of June 2008, or the middle of June 2008, when Caylee goes missing, she's at Tony's house more. Tony and his roommate were DJs, and one night they hosted a hot body contest. This was June 20th, so 4 days after her daughter supposedly is kidnapped, right? And Casey participates in this hot body contest. There are tons of pictures in the media of her in this contest. She's wearing this blue dress. She is smiling, like, has the biggest smile on her face. She doesn't look like she has any cares, basically.
That's the biggest thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Who cares what she's wearing? But it's the fact that she's doing these activities after her daughter is quote-unquote kidnapped.
Well, I say that, like, who cares what she wears? Because, I mean, if you got them, flaunt them, right? I do all the time. But
even if you don't, fucking wear what you want.
Exactly. But I think the media showed them so much because she's this attractive girl in skimpy clothing. Like, I think the media went above and beyond to show these, but also to show that she didn't seem like she cared.
Right. Right. Again, that's the big thing of it, right? That's where the attention should have been, is the fact that she was doing this competition and, like, she seemed normal, she was happy, and
she
like,
didn't seem like a mother
carefree.
whose child is missing, basically. Casey also got a tattoo during this time that says Bella Vita, which in Italian means beautiful life. I'm sorry, but I don't think my life would be beautiful if my child was missing.
No, I mean, she thought she could get away with getting rid of her child so she didn't have to have one anymore.
Yeah, so she could party. Another expert testifies that there were searches in the computer for chloroform, how to make chloroform, neck-breaking, household weapons. Yeah. Cindy Anthony tries to explain away the search for the chloroform, says she made the searches, even though prosecutors have evidence that she and George were at work at the time of the search. Because you know when your search history, it comes up with the time. So they
Sure
know
does.
for a fact that George and Cindy were at work.
I mean, I guess I understand, like, what you said makes sense, right? She lost her granddaughter. She doesn't want to lose her daughter. But again, at the same time, like you said too, like, she took the life of your granddaughter, her daughter,
Yeah.
and then went on as life was better.
Yeah. It was beautiful. A beautiful life. The defense also tries to tear apart the testimony of the subject who found Kaylee's body, the Roy Kronk. He says Roy moved the body and the crime scene is compromised because of this. Because I guess when he found it, he, like, poked at it and picked it up with, like,
He was like, what's
equipment.
this?
Yeah, he's like, what is that? Because, you know, nobody thinks they're going to find a skull.
A tiny body.
Yeah.
That's the thing, too, that I think is probably the most traumatic, especially for that guy. Like, I feel really bad that he got roped into this because, of course, he did, right? He happens to be the unlucky son of a bitch that found the body. But you stumble across a human skull you're going to recognize as a human skull. Also, you are immediately going to recognize that it is a young person.
Yeah, and they knew
they're going to have a little skull
all over the media that Caylee Anthony, because did you notice they said in the Caylee Anthony area in that phone call? So he probably knew right away. I think I read somewhere, which I don't know if this is true or not, but I did read in one source that they had actually been like, you should search this area. But because it's Florida, it was like a swampy area and there had been water in the area, which probably aided in the decomp, right? So he probably, after he confirmed that it was a skull, probably instantly was like, I found Caylee Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, that you're never going to shake that.
Yeah. Dr. Werner Spitz, who also testified in the OJ case and other high-profile cases, comes to testify for the defense, which to me I'm like, barf, but he says that the duct tape could not have been used to suffocate Caylee. He states, I think the duct tape was a later event, not an early event. He tells the jury...
And that makes it okay? Like...
Yeah, and that also, like, what would be the point in that? He also says that it was probably introduced after decomposition, and this helped the defense raise questions about the cause of death that the prosecutors had come up with, which to me, I'm like, it doesn't raise any questions for me. I would just be like, okay, this guy was paid by the defense to say this. But I mean, I can understand because he has testified on other high profile cases. He does have a good reputation, right? But I'm like, let's just think about this for a minute, right? If it was placed after decomp, either the body wasn't where they found it and then somebody wrapped duct tape around it for what reason, right? Or they went back and they put the duct tape on the body.
None of that makes
it doesn't
sense.
make any sense. And what is the point? Oh, they're decomposing and now I need to put duct tape on here to keep the skull together? Why?
No.
That would be my question.
Yeah.
I would be like, me in the jury box, I'd be like, sorry, Your Honor, I have a question. Can you tell me why? Like, just be a lot of questions, right?
Yeah.
The defense calls witnesses that testify that Casey had a good relationship with Caylee, that there were no signs of abuse or neglect, and that she was a good mother and she wasn't desperate for a child-free life. To which I say, sometimes you do not see child abuse. Sometimes it is not obvious, right? She was a young child.
Yep.
Also, sometimes, a lot of the time, the child loves their parent, even if they're being abused.
Yes.
They're gonna
because they don't
be
know
loyal,
any different.
Exactly. And they're going to be loyal to that parent because a child is born and it just instantly loves you. If you're its parent, you're there to take care of them. They don't understand, also at that young of age, if she was being abused, she wouldn't understand that it was abuse. She might just think that it's normal. So to that I say, well, there's no evidence that she wasn't abused either. I'm sorry, but there just wasn't. And it's really easy for, like, and especially in this world, right? They have that Instagram life where they just, everything looks perfect, but it's not really perfect. We see that all the time.
Well, exactly, right? Like, you can curate what you put out to the world.
Yeah. And, okay, so maybe she wasn't desperate for a child-free life, but she sure as hell did love the child-free life when Caylee was gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's evidence of it.
Well, again, I'll tie it, like, her whole comment about, like, my life, you know, nobody cares about my life is over, blah, 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 blah. I don't think she was talking about the fact that she was in jail.
No, she was
I think she was talking about the fact that she got pregnant at 19 and had a kid.
Mm-hmm. And I think she was more irritated, like you've said multiple times, but I think she was more irritated that, like, she may have thought she got rid of her quote-unquote problem, right? She saw having a child as a problem because she couldn't live the life she wanted. Mm-hmm. But now everybody's, like, questioning her, and she just doesn't have time for that because she's got better things to do. That just seems how she kind of views it, right? The defense closes by saying that the prosecutor's story doesn't add up, that there was no evidence to show where Caylee Anthony was when she died, no evidence to show how she died or when she died. He then brings up a picture of Caylee opening the back door, and the swimming pool can be seen in the background of the picture. He says, this is an accident that snowballed out of control. So after all of this evidence, what would you, as a jury member, say?
If I had to take into account the conversation that we had, I mean, for me, coming at the tail end of all this and being like, this is what the prosecution says, it's tough because you don't want to, you know, if somebody's a victim of something, you don't want to push that aside. But at the same time, it doesn't explain away the stuff that she did at the beginning of all this. Like, it doesn't explain away, like their whole like, oh well, this happened before this reason, doesn't explain away her behavior or like why she never went to the, like why she continued to lie. It's just not enough to clear her of the guilt of it all. Like, it just doesn't make sense, I guess, to me.
Yeah. So do you think that she killed Caylee?
I think so, yes.
I would personally vote for guilty. That would be my personal vote as a jury member. Yeah. I don't think you're going to like this next part. On July 5th, 2011, after almost 6 weeks of testimony and 400 pieces of evidence presented in the court, the jury of 7 women and 5 men takes less than 11 hours to reach a verdict of not guilty.
I mean, that's the thing. We weren't in that courtroom. We don't know exactly how it all comes down to how. That's why I get so frustrated with like defense attorneys and stuff like that, because I get it's their job and their job is important when somebody is innocent. So if she's innocent, great, you did your job. But at the same time, like, it all comes down to how you spin that story.
I don't think you're gonna like him in a minute. I mean, I'm pretty sure you don't like him already. Like, I don't like him because I honestly think she's guilty. There's just too much circumstantial evidence, right? And like, I know circumstantial evidence is not the same as DNA evidence. However, there is proof that there was a dead body in that trunk. No mother who didn't have something to do with their child going missing is going to not report that child missing for 31 days.
Yeah. It just to me, it feels like something, again, we don't know everything that was said by the defense in there, so we don't know how they spun it that way, but it just definitely feels like an after excuse. It doesn't explain the chain of events that got her to be arrested. That doesn't line up.
Yeah. And I don't know, my thought kind of is too, like, she's this pretty woman, so I don't know. I think that played part in it too, which is sucky.
Like a sympathy thing?
Yeah. In an interview on ID channel on one of the documentaries I watched, Cindy Anthony says that she's okay with the verdict because she prayed to God to give the best sentence to Casey that he could. She thinks that Caylee accidentally drowned in the pool and Casey freaked out, and she says she has to forgive her, and she still talks to her daughter occasionally. To which all of that I say, barf, barf, barf.
So if that's what she thinks happens, if she thinks that Caylee accidentally drowned in the pool, she is okay with then her daughter trying to put her husband away?
Well, and her daughter claiming that her husband sexually abused her, and then also, like, she's okay with the fact that her daughter and her husband put her in a plastic bag and threw her basically in swampland behind their house. Like, It's just disgusting. I'm sorry. And also this whole, I pray to God. Okay, well, God probably didn't have any say in what the jury decided. I'm sorry. That's just my thought. George Anthony doesn't agree with Cindy and simply states that Jose Baez just put on a better show. He tells ID he doesn't believe that Caylee drowned in the pool, and he calls it, and this is a quote, a bunch of crap, which I kind of loved. George says that he saw unusual behavior in Caylee before her death, and he thinks that Casey may have been giving Caylee drugs such as Xanax, street name Xanny, to get her to sleep.
Oh,
later,
interesting.
Yes. Later, it would be a theory that Xanny the nanny was actually Xanax.
Was medication.
And that she was medicating Caylee as a way to babysit her. George and Casey no longer have a relationship, and George says when all this happened, he lost his daughter and his granddaughter, and he never wants to talk to his daughter again.
I don't blame him.
He says justice would be for his daughter to be behind bars and to suffer the way Caylee did, which is how I think I would feel. George and Cindy are still married, even though they have different opinions.
Why?
I don't understand it either. Because also, like, so here's my thought, right, on that. They have these differing opinions. As George Anthony, I would be very upset if my significant other was okay with my daughter making up these lies about me.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand how they do it. So in that interview, Cindy says nobody else would understand what she's been through. And I'm like, okay, but that's like not enough of a reason to be like, okay, so you're okay with our daughter saying that I was a rapist? Cool, we'll just stay together. Also, you're okay with the fact that our daughter killed our granddaughter? Cool, we'll just stay together. Like, I don't know how he does it. To each their own. I think it would cause a lot of arguments. That's just my thought. I mean, I'm not a therapist.
You have to wonder what that relationship looks like. Like, it's probably one of both parties, it's like that ignore it. Again, the ignore it and it didn't happen. Like, we'll just never talk about the fact that there's this huge crater between us.
Yeah. Also,
and
maybe
just go on
they'd been married for
lives.
so long that it's like, oh, we've been together this long, we might as well stay together. Also, the whole world hates us and our daughters, so we don't really have a lot of choices, probably.
I mean, you don't have to be married to somebody, is my answer to that. Like, you can just get divorced and, like, not remarry.
I mean, that's true. People do it all the time. But I just, like, we're not here to talk about their relationship. I just think it would be weird. I think it would be hard.
I wouldn't be okay with it.
There would be a lot of therapy that would have to happen, and even then I don't think I could do it. The public's outrage was directed at Casey Anthony as well as the jurors of the case. Jurors got death threats after the verdict, and
people are bonkers.
Yeah.
People are so crazy.
Yeah. Probably those same people who waited outside the courtroom at 3 a.m.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jurors say that they didn't see enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt how Caylee died or if Casey killed her. To which I say, circumstantial evidence is also evidence. But whatever, moving on.
But again, we've also talked about before that all the defense has to do is seed probable doubt.
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of that scene in Chicago when he, like, does his little dance. Yeah. That's what it reminds me of. You just have to put on a better show, right? They state the body being decomposed also wasn't helpful in the case, and they didn't tell...
Oh, so sorry.
Sorry that was an inconvenience for you.
Oh, gosh.
It didn't
help. Oh, that's poorly worded, jury person.
It is. They also say that they couldn't say how the chloroform was made or if it was bought. They just feel like there were a lot of questions that weren't answered. To which I say, yeah, like, why the fuck didn't you report your daughter missing 31 days? Like, that would be my main question. I don't know. One juror would later state, my decision haunts me to this day. I think now if I were to do it over again, I'd push harder to convict her of one of the lesser charges, like aggravated manslaughter. At least that, or child abuse. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I didn't stand up for what I believed in at the time.
I feel like that happens in a lot of juries.
Which is sad. I just don't understand how they found her not guilty. There are people who are actually found guilty who are innocent and have less evidence.
Yeah, we just talked about it.
I don't understand. We did. Literally just talk about it. 2 days after the verdict, she's sentenced to 4 years for lying to police and the misdemeanor charges from that. She had already served 3 years and only served 10 more days after this. And then she's released from prison.
Wait, she spent 3 years and 10 days of a 4-year sentence?
Correct, because she was released because of good behavior.
Sure.
Because our justice system is great. Because of the strain this trial put on her relationship with her family, she has to go somewhere else and out on her own. Surprise, surprise.
Not that she cared.
Casey
she
Anthony,
might actually have to get a job, though.
Yeah, but or not, because she obviously survived that long without one.
Yeah.
She lives with her lawyer for a while and then a church compound.
That's weird.
Yeah, it gets weirder.
Oh, okay. 2
of her charges for lying to police are overturned eventually. However, she's sued by Zenaida Gonzalez and the Texas Equisearch. Eventually, she files for bankruptcy, so she can't pay anyone back anyway, and then Zenaida's case is dismissed. Allegations later come out that Jose Baez controlled her whole life and that Casey Anthony paid for Jose's services with sexual acts. So Dominic Casey is a private investigator hired by the defense team, and he alleges that he sees Casey Anthony running through Jose's office stark naked while giggling, and Jose had made statements about Casey owing him blowjobs for some of the work he's done. So apparently he set up to have her do an interview. She said she didn't want to do an interview with the media, probably because, you know, she'd look guilty, because she is. And he was like, you owe me 3 blowjobs for this, or something like that.
Wow, gross.
Yeah.
Also, at the same time as she doesn't deserve any sort of, like, sympathy or anything like that, it does feel like he obviously took advantage of her.
Definitely. Dominic Casey came up with the theory that Caylee had drowned in the pool, and then that's when Baez and Casey went with that story. So, as of March 14th, 2022, Casey had started a private investigator's business and claims she knows how it feels to be charged with something she didn't do. Insert eye roll. That's what I put in my notes here.
Are you kidding me?
Huge eye roll.
Okay.
She was working on a book about her life, and sources say she was also working on a movie about the events.
if it's that painful in your life, you don't want it out there again. Like, she's just making money.
Well, she likes the attention, too.
Right. She's making money based on this tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter. First of all, it doesn't matter how your daughter died. Your daughter died. Don't write a fucking movie about it, you sicko.
Yeah, also, like, oh, I got away with murder, so let me write a book about how I got away with murder. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, but that doesn't go well either. We know how that goes.
Also, what are we, O.J. Simpson? Hello. Casey did an interview in 2017. She stated she didn't want to bring another child into this world. She states, and this is a quote, "If I am blessed enough to have another child, if I'd be dumb enough to bring another kid into this world, knowing that there would be a potential that some jackass, their little snot-nosed kid, would then say something mean to my kid, I don't think I could live with that." Okay, how
Jesus.
the fuck are you living knowing that your daughter is dead? And, like, I'm sorry. Again, I say fuck you. Anyone who doesn't report their child missing and is charged with neglect now faces felony charges in Florida. This is per the ID documentary. 2 days after Casey was found not guilty, Caylee's law was drafted in Florida, Oklahoma, New York, and West Virginia. And in 2011, New Jersey was the first state to enact Caylee's law. The last thing I read said that she lived with some other guy and she's trying to do that PI business, which I'm like, why would you hire Casey Anthony to be your private investigator? It's all weird.
I don't understand.
I don't understand anything. Didn't understand from the beginning when I was pregnant with Novalee and watching and eating my popcorn, watching Nancy Grace and being like, what the fuck is going on? I don't understand how they found her not guilty. I don't understand. And it actually makes me mad. At the very least, she, like he said, should have been found guilty of something. Because accident or not, I personally don't think it was an accident. I personally believe that she probably was using some kind of drug to babysit Caylee because she didn't want to be a parent and she wanted to go have fun. And maybe it was an accident. Maybe she overdosed her. Maybe not. We'll never know, right? Kaylee's the only one who will know. And it's really sad because she was so young. And I just wish that this is my whole thought in child abuse. Based on my personal experience, based on the things I've seen professionally, if you cannot be a parent, please let someone else be a parent to your child who will actually love them and take care of them. She could have gone to her mom and said, I cannot be a parent. Can you take her? That was always a choice. I mean, I honestly don't know how their relationship was. I don't know if Cindy was like, no, this is your problem, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like they probably would have been like, okay, we'll take her.
And it's hard to judge, right? Because, like, she's willing to make all these excuses for her daughter now, so maybe she was the, like, she's your daughter, you need to take care of her sort of thing, like.
Yeah. So maybe
appreciate
maybe
what
that's
you
part
have.
of why she makes the excuses, because she feels guilty.
Mm-hmm. So did the defense then, the defense had all these allegations against George, did they ever press any charges?
Nope.
Interesting.
Because it never happened, I don't think. I think she's a pathological liar. I think she tried to make excuses for why she's a pathological liar, and she thought, oh, I'll just come up with this idea that I was molested. And I don't know, maybe it did happen. We don't know for sure, right?
Right, we don't know.
It's just my personal opinion that it probably didn't. However, I mean, there are some weird things, like, just like her paying for stuff with sex and using her body a lot seems like to get things that she wants, right? So maybe, like, I know that sex abuse victims oftentimes do that, like, we don't really know for sure, and he's never been charged with anything, so he's not a sex offender. Like, there's nothing to support her claims, and why did this come out in the trial? It's just, it's all, there's lots of questions.
I mean, I could see it being seated in truth that maybe that came out, like, while she was talking things over with the attorneys and stuff like that, and so they're like, well, let's build on that and make him the bad guy in all of this. Like, maybe that actually did happen, but it didn't have any immediate effect on what happened to Caylee.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't want to keep repeating the same thing. It's tough to say because we weren't there, so we don't know exactly how the defense presented everything. I mean, obviously it was enough that gave people second guesses that even though they felt confident about something, they went along with what the other jurors thought. because it was enough that they were agreeable to it and they weren't like, no, it doesn't make sense or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's bonkers to me that she got away not guilty when she's definitely guilty of things. You know what I mean? Like, she still had a hand in her daughter's death. What the defense came up with doesn't explain all the other stuff that happened before they came up with this theory.
None of it makes sense.
Also, her living with the attorney is so uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable.
And also the whole PI's accusations about her just the entire thing is just a lot of weirdness, a lot of questions, so many questions. But it's sad because kind of like in all of this, people lost sight that this poor little girl lost her life. Yeah. She didn't even get a chance to live. And for why? Because her mom wanted to party. Like I said, if you can't be a parent, man up, say you can't be a parent. Don't make that child suffer because you can't be a parent and you are so narcissistic you can't admit it.
Maybe she tried.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why she was maybe it was not only on top of having to be a parent, but she was resentful to Caylee. Probably. Because she didn't want this baby and liked the life that she had, but mom said, no, you have to keep her. So now it's an anchor. Now she can't, her life is gone, plus she's being dragged down. So there's probably resentment there as well.
Yeah. She's forced to be a parent when she didn't want to be. And which I like could understand a little bit, but I also am like sitting here hearing you say that. Okay, well, your parents can't force you when you're an adult to do things you don't want to do. And maybe because she didn't have a job and she needed a place to stay, that played part in it. But also like drop your kid off at the nearest fire station.
Yeah.
Anything but killing her. This is me just speaking to Casey Anthony as I've said.
Another mom.
Yes,
another
and as
young
I've
mom.
said like 5 times on this episode, fuck you. And that's all I have to say. Like...
Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Truth Lies and Alibis.